Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today. It's called Alchemy to Awaken the Ancestral Healer Within. Connect to your soul's sacred trickster to activate your spiritual gifts. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm really delighted and blessed to be here with you, really learning from and connecting with a remarkable teacher who's integrating so many different threads into a coherent tapestry of how do we become ancestral healers for our lineage and really move forward in a new way. Her name is Rabbi Dr. Tirzah Firestone. She's a very popular Shift faculty member. She's a Jungian psychotherapist, an award-winning author, as well as a rabbi. So she's integrating a lot of streams of wisdom into one coherent package of how do we really heal and transform some of the deepest aspects of our lineage and our being. We recently ran a 7-week program with Tirzah, got amazing feedback, and so we're really blessed to have her back, and we're going to share a little bit more about a brand new program where you can go still further with her, and we'll share more about that towards the end of the hour. So with that said, Tirzah, welcome today.
Thank you, Stephen. So nice to be here and see you again.
Well, I'm excited today because we're going to get to go a little bit more into your Jungian side than we probably have before, with a lot of exploration of alchemy and what it can mean for us in terms of our abilities as ancestral healers and navigating the modern world. So very exciting, but let's start with a little bit of your backstory, particularly as it relates to today and looking at how to do the alchemy of ancestral healing work. And so what was it that propelled you and put you on this path?
Yeah, this is a whole new wing of my study and my work. It actually began with a dream that I had recently. It was at first a troubling dream. A rabbinic colleague of mine from across the country came to visit me, and he brought me a newly unearthed gift, which was a bone from the body of my eldest brother, Danny, whom I adored, who took his life at the age of 30. Now, I was 20 at the time, and I have spent my whole adult life working through that loss and grieving it and feeling really good, accepting him as an ancestor and talking to him all the time. My colleague presented me with this bone, and I was shocked. He said, bury this bone. It's never been buried. And make sure you have plenty of flowers, because the power in flowers will bring the healing that he requires. So that was the dream, and much to unpack and many deeper meanings that I'll share in the course of my teachings. But for now, let me just say that the dream led me on this amazing journey, full of synchronicities and full of flower power, which I took as a symbol for the divine feminine wisdom that lives under the surface of the earth and comes up seasonally. And I just had this sense that my brother's bone was a primal, the prima materia, was an alchemical substance that begged for healing that I hadn't gotten to yet. It was an ancestral piece that needed resolution. So that led me to another a wild goose chase, in a sense, to the legend of a prophetess, a Hebrew prophetess named Serach, who is very little known, but she had the power of music. And she, with her music, drew up the bones from the bottom of the Nile River to the surface to take to the promised land, the bones of her uncle, Joseph. Anyway, all of this is swirling in my head, and I mentioned alchemy to a friend who told me that she had just come from Prague and had visited the alchemical laboratories in Prague. Well, Prague is a very special place for me. That's where my ancestors come from. Many of them died in the concentration camp nearby, but that's where they lived for centuries. And as I studied on, I learned that Prague was a center for alchemy and a center for Kabbalah. And yes, there are alchemical laboratories there that have been maintained. All of this was fascinating to me. So let me just pause here and say, what is alchemy? Alchemy was the medieval forerunner of chemistry. And the goal of these alchemists, who were mystics and quasi-scientists, the goal of the alchemists was to convert base metals like lead into refined precious ones like gold, and also other symbols like diamond, to come up with a healing elixir. And in their laboratories, they did this transformational magic. And they used 4 elements. They burned fire. They always had kilns there. They had fresh air running, water, access to the earth, to develop this philosopher's stone, this healing elixir that could heal anything that it transformed. Okay, so that's the legend of the medieval. This is like 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. And Carl Jung, when he studied this ancient mystical art, realized that the alchemists were really mystics, and that their magical science was just a metaphor for the stages that we all go through, each one of us, everyone hearing this right now, that we all go through naturally to become our whole selves, to become our healed selves, our enlightened selves. And each of us has, for example, the work of converting, transforming, transmuting the heavy metals in our lives, our shadow material, if we're on the path of consciousness. And we realize we have wounds. We all have wounds, we all have traumas, and we've inherited them. We've come by them honestly, and we don't want to be enslaved by them, right? We don't want to be subject to them. We need to convert these wounds into what I call usable wisdom, and convert our grief into gold, and convert our fears, all of our fears, into faith, into alignment, to become enlightened, to become our whole selves. So Jung understood that alchemy, this ancient art with all of its stages and symbols, is really just a map of consciousness. It's a psycho-spiritual map. It's a journey to becoming ourselves, to becoming healers, to becoming the healing elixir ourselves, so that we have the power to heal everything that we touch in our lives. They had these fancy test tubes that they called the alchemical vessels, the alchemical flasks, where their transformational magic occurred. And it was said that these flasks had to be hermetically sealed from the outside world for the transformation to happen. All of this is symbolic language. And they had the most amazing images for all the artists out there who understand visually the deep transformational processes that go on inside of us. They loved art, and their art directly corresponded to the anatomy of the unconscious that Jung had been mapping for decades. So I'm a Jungian psychotherapist, as you said, Stephen, and also a rabbi and a student of Jewish mysticism called Kabbalah. And one more thing blew my mind when I did this study just recently. This is all just recent. I saw the paintings that are on the walls of the alchemical laboratories, and there were rabbis who I knew. For instance, this one rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda Loew, who was called more familiarly as the Maharal of Prague, and he was this great philosopher and mystic. He is known as the one who made the golem, breathed life into a divine being. All of this, again, symbolic language. I practically fell over when I saw this painting on the wall, and it pointed to this amazing confluence of alchemists and Kabbalists. Their worlds intersected in these centuries, the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. Because what the alchemists were saying is that there was this spirit, this mercurial spirit that was hidden away in the darkness of matter, and that all of matter is alive. The whole world is really alive. That matter is not dead. We know that now. And that there's this trickster element, this divine spark that's buried in the densest of things, even the worst events, the tragedies of our lives. In every part of our life, there is something glinting, something winking at us. So they call this brilliant spark Mercurius. And the Kabbalists, or the Jewish mystics, called it the Nitzuts, the divine, I love that word, Nitzuts. It sounds like a divine spark, it twinkles. And it's buried also, it's buried in the events of our lives, it's buried in the lead of our lives, always playing, they said, a kind of hide and seek with us, winking to us behind the shards and the divisions and the pain of this world. So here's that confluence. And one of the central motifs in Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism is an ancient myth that there was a primordial rupture at the beginning of life on this planet called the breaking of the vessels. And some compare it to the Big Bang. In this myth, the primordial light was so powerful and so formidable, it shattered the containers that were set out for it, smashed the vessels of this world, and it producing a huge explosion of light that splintered and hid, all the splinters of light hid behind the outer facades of life, and requiring all of us conscious human beings to look behind the surface of life to find the sparks and redeem them and let them and free them. So that's what the work of alchemy is, that's what the work of Kabbalah is, to free the divinity in all things, to free the split, the duality between spirit and matter. And I could go on, but what they were attempting to do in the laboratories was to refine these coarse levels, to melt them down, to allow the divine pure gold to emerge. So the alchemists and the Kabbalists were on the grand scheme, looking at a cosmic level. But Jung said, no, all of this stuff is going on right inside of us, at the level of each of our psyches. And in other words, each of us and our families, there are ruptures, there's these explosions, there are these traumas that happen throughout our lives. And it's ours, for every enlightened person, for every conscious person, to become the alchemical vessels for their families, for ourselves, for our families and our lineages, to transform ourselves so that we can become healers. And how do we do this? We bring all the ingredients, all the messiness, all the messy, yucky patterns and failures and ruptures and traumas, in our ancestral histories, our family shadows. We bring a good dose of self-compassion, hopefully. We bring a desire to heal. And that unpredictable, wise, sparkling power from the unconscious, the trickster agent, who inhabits our deepest self, who holds the key to our healing. Now, that sparkling quicksilver entity called Mercurius, Jung taught that we each have that mercurial quicksilver piece inside of us that goads us. This is our primal nature. It's the part of us that got us here into this life, into this body, into this family. It's ungovernable. That's why the ego can't stand it, because the ego doesn't have control over it. It comes up in dreams. It comes up in, like my bone dream. It comes up in synchronicities. It bubbles up in coincidences in our lives and twists of fate. But it has the power to heal if we listen to it. If we don't listen to it, it can really trip us up. So Mercurius was depicted in the ancient manuscripts as many things. One of the things which I find so fascinating that I'll be teaching about is the hermaphrodite, what the ancients call the hermaphrodite. Now, this is a double-headed character standing on top of the world, and this character represents our dual nature, our unified married nature, both our healed masculine side and our healed feminine side, our evolved self. And this is the person who's done their work and achieved balance. Another symbol for this divine trickster within us is the fiery dragon. And the dragon symbolizes the powerful, creative spirit that lives inside each of us, that we have to tap to become healers and artists and transform people. And you may have seen this other symbol, which is the snake eating its tail. In Latin, the alchemists called it the Ouroboros. This is a circular figure, a snake that symbolizes the endless process of renewal, the never-ending wisdom that we can tap. And we find this symbol from all over the world, from Greece to China, all the way back from the 8th century. And here's an amazing combination of the snake and the dragon together, with that amazing seeing eye, the wise eye, the good eye, at the very center, like a mandala, gazing at us and inviting us on a journey to become our wise and healed selves. And finally, the alchemists and the Kabbalists understood that there's no journey at all without the divine feminine. And she is the central part of this quickening spirit. She's like the maestro. She conducts the whole show in a sense. She's called Sophia, she's called wisdom, she's called Shekhinah, she's called the anima mundi, the soul of the world, and she guides our transformational work. So as you can see, this has been an amazing journey that I've been on. The journey led by my sacred trickster, I think you could say, from my dream about burying my brother's bone all the way into the alchemist's laboratories, to the Jewish mystical feminine wisdom tradition, and most importantly, bringing all of it back to the cauldron of ancestral healing, which is my practice right now, to help all that we're facing in the planet right now, to help heal our families and our lineages.
What an extraordinary journey and transmission you just shared of this weaving together of different threads. And clearly you've been fated to do this work, or programmed to do this with the ancestry you have, and the dream, and the unique constellation of trainings you've done as well. So one thing that kind of occurs to me in thinking about these medieval alchemists and cross-pollinating with the Kabbalists, and and you said that it's a lot about bridging the spiritual and the material. And one thing that when we talk about alchemy now, it's like it doesn't seem like there are very many people who are actually doing laboratory practices of trying to transform. Is there something important about that we lost, where we take it now symbolically or metaphorically? Is there something about actually working with real elements in a real way that actually catalyzes the personal transformational process as well?
That's a great question, Stephen. I love that. In the Jungian world, we call this psychological alchemy nowadays. They talk a lot about the stages of alchemy, how they correspond to the stages within us and the 4 elements, and how they're different character types, but it tends to be from the neck and up. And what I want to do in the forthcoming course is to make it real, to actually ritualize. Now, rituals, we actually do things. It's not just in the head. It's in the imaginal realm for sure. We enter the ancestral worlds. But in this course, we're going to be actually burying things in Mother Earth. And so we're actually going to do some rituals with the elements and in Mother Nature. I wish we could all be together in person, but each of us has our own little plot of park or backyard or land somewhere, or even a potted plant, where we will do the 4-element ritual. And that, I think, brings more power to it. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's sort of like the physicalization of the psychological process, and it honors the dream image too, with the bone from your brother. You introduced a lot of the key concepts, I think, of alchemy, and so if we're thinking about this moment that we're in right now, I mean, clearly there's been an eruption of what can only be called like the shadow collectively, and there's a lot of people who are being triggered by that in different ways, and so there's a lot of material that's being stirred up. So maybe share a little bit about like how to approach that from an alchemical perspective. Like, what is it that, how do we sort of engage with that which is being triggered or erupted by some of these collective processes, war trauma, Holocaust trauma? Oh, there's a lot of layers of what's being erupted and just the reaction to that, as an example, collectively.
Absolutely. There's enormous collective anxiety now. Each one of us feels it in our own parts of the news that are aggravating us and really making us fearful or restless. And so that is just, I think that's the milieu. or ambiance of our state of affairs right now. When we do this work, I find, when we do the powerful work of entering in the alchemical processes and entering into the ancestral chambers, there is a profound stilling and soothing to connect with the unseen realms. So we have all kinds of help. We have all kinds of anchoring that's possible from our guides and our ancestral, we call them the Wawas for short, the wise and well ancestors who are guiding the processes that we're doing. We take pains to really connect and anchor ourselves into their guidance. There is a huge healing effect that happens when we do that, because remember, our ancestors also lived through enormous events. They lived through them somehow because we're here. They survived to bring us into being, and so we are the product of their experiences, some of which were very dramatic. And so we have within us also their wisdom. We have within us their resilience. And when we make that connection in the ancestral halls, there is this powerful calming effect that happens, and stilling and anchoring effect, so that we can then come out into the world and know that there's a much bigger picture. There's a bigger tapestry of which these are just the stitches, the small stitches, but we see the big picture. Just giving little hints about how this work works and how tremendously healing it is, especially in our time right now.
You mentioned in describing the sort of the alchemical process how important the hermetically sealed vessel was for it. So, let me share about it. Like in your doing these processes in a more psychological way now. Like how do you create that hermetic vessel through which like this transmutation can take place, and cultivate the patience for that as well?
Wonderful question, also because I think, in a sense, in a Jungian sense, in a depth psychological sense, we need to become the alchemical vessel. That's our psyche. That's the we are the test tubes. We are the place that this transformation takes place. We become the locus. And that means to become hermetically sealed also means that there's a meditative discipline required to get still enough, and that we do all this in my teaching, to become still enough, embodied, anchored enough to allow these transformational, these quicksilver processes to work inside of us. It doesn't mean to turn off the news and not be fully engaged in the world, but when we do these rituals, it is really like we're hermetically sealed. We come together. There's invocations and there's protective mechanisms that we use to seal off the anxiety-producing elements of the world and just really go into this ritual space.
Fascinating. Well, I know you want to take us on a bit of an experience of some aspect of this today, particularly around Mercurius, which you said plays a very key role in this catalyzing this transformational process for each of us.
I'd love to. Okay. So, to everyone who's listening, I am so happy you're here. And let me begin by saying there is no formula, by necessarily so. By definition, there can be no formula to engage Mercurius, because Mercurius is this quicksilver element, this sacred trickster inside that lives inside of each one of us. Our egos cannot govern this quicksilver process or this quicksilver element in us, but we do know that it is hell-bent on goading us, on tickling us, on stimulating us and quickening our growth. That's what it wants to do. That's what it is meant to do, is to goad us into becoming our fullest, most evolved souls in this lifetime. So, having said all that, would you take a moment right now, get comfortable, and sit back Take a breath and let's slow down. Take your time to drop your shoulders and feel your hands. Wherever they're resting is fine. Feel your hands grow heavy and relaxed. And so relaxed and so gentle that you can actually feel the little drum beat in each finger, the little pulse in each finger. And let their heaviness and let your hands' relaxation and pulsation just travel through you, take you into a really nice place. When you're ready, see yourself flying gently over your own life, watching and watchful. I want you to look for a time in your life when you were goaded into growth. You were catalyzed. Maybe a moment in your life when your journey got unexpectedly accelerated. Just pinning down, focusing in on one time in your life. Maybe it was a dream or an unexpected meeting or a comment that someone made that triggered an idea in you, or maybe it was a synchronicity or an uncanny coincidence that spurred you on, that spurred you into growth, into self-realization, and spurred into more light in your life. It may not have been comfortable, it may have been actually hard. But looking back at it now, you can see from a distance, you can see, wow, that moment of quickening really spurred some good growth. Now, if nothing is appearing, don't worry, because just by virtue of the fact that you're here today is trickster enough. Just that you're here. I want you to take that feeling, that quicksilvery kind of untamable, maybe it's a little out of control sparkler feeling that spurred you in your life, and just feel that for a moment. What did it feel like to have that dream or to have that idea that just took you on a journey, took you on into a new chapter of your life? Good. Now, with that feeling, I want you to come down out of the air and travel into your body. And I want you to go specifically under your sternum, under your breastbone. You can touch yourself there to connect if you like. And travel to the back door of your own heart. Now, I mean, the organ, your organ, it's called the heart, and it is your heart. It is about the size of your fist. It is pulsating, it's pink, it's like a living jewel that lives deep inside your body, inside your chest. And imagine coming through the back door of your heart. So you're entering this powerful organ of your heart. And as you do, I'll give you a minute to catch up with me. You're entering in way, the side that's facing your spinal column, way in back there. There's a little trap door that nobody knows about, and you're entering there. And once you open the door, you encounter there a twinkling being with a broad smile who knows you. He knows you well, in fact. In fact, this being knows you sometimes better than your own self. This is your mercurial self, bent on healing you, bent on growing you to your fullest, to your most luminous. Now, you're encountering this being. Don't feel intimidated, please. This quicksilver being is your ally. And we're only here for a moment because this being doesn't let any moss grow under their feet. So I want you to just feel what it's like. Let the shiver run through you if that's what you feel. Let yourself feel what it's like to be in the presence of this goading power of your psyche, and ask one question. Ask one question that's current for you now. Ask what healing your soul needs now. Ask anything you like. And the trickster, remember, may not answer in regular words. It may hand you an object or give you a feeling or communicate in some other way. I'm going to be quiet now. Just let that transaction happen. What is the message that's being broadcast to you? What is the main thing? Well, the main thing is to receive from this sacred character within you. So when you're done, time to press the enter button, so to speak, to take a breath, breathe in, mentally record what you've experienced in this interior place, and gently, gently walk back, close the back door of your heart, and come join me and all of us back with Stephen.
Well, thank you for that. You have a very inviting way of deepening into ourselves. So I ended up with a staff that it kind of had a little bit of the Egyptian ankh top to it. It wasn't like the whole thing was an ankh, but the kind of had a rounded top on it like that.
Wow, beautiful. Just a little taste of this sacred trickster inside.
So I imagine it part of how you work with what arises. So you're kind of in a way eliciting a dreamlike state. So your subconscious can communicate more symbolically. So do you work with it similarly to working with dreams in an alchemical context?
Right, exactly. Jung called it the active imagination. I don't love that title because it sounds imagination we equate with Disney, and it's really an imaginal realm, this deep, deep backdoor place inside of us that gives us the symbols and the messages, the guidance that we need. It's how the ancestors speak through us, and it's not the beta frequency of our brains. It's it's more delta and different theta frequencies that we enter to go to different places that are very wise and help us heal.
Fascinating. Well, I'd love you to share a little bit more about, you referenced earlier about how there's kind of the mythology of the kind of shattering of the different aspects of light kind of going into different parts of the world. So how do we start to look at our ancestral lineage and do this alchemical work and see these pieces of light kind of being reassembled back into who we are now and how we're moving forward?
That's right. That's the That's the big question about ancestral healing. So we look for the light in the deepest of traumas, in the biggest of ruptures. Uh, you know, I've had students who've gone through just unthinkable tragedy, but nothing is arbitrary. I believe that nothing is as purely accidental, even that there's light to bring forward to harvest in the most dense or coarse, leaden areas of our lives. And also, we have to be working in the world right now with these terrible things that are going on. So all of the work is really, we start with ourselves and our own healing, we move to our families and our lineages, and then obviously there's a huge world out there, and so much light to bring forth.
How do you apply this to traumas that might be deeper in our lineage that we might not have had directly experienced ourselves?
Yes, well, most of them we haven't, because we're many of us we're very privileged. We live in relatively safe places, most of us. I should say that, I say that guardedly. It's less and less true. We're feeling less and less safe, but we have the privilege of taking these courses. We have the privilege and the spaciousness to do the inner work. And so we come by, we are the generation where a lot of the residue of trauma has landed in us. And we get to, because of our privilege, because of our spaciousness, we get to feel it, to understand it, to work with it, and transmute it. And so by doing that, we are healing backwards. We're healing retroactively our ancestors who were basically, they were on the run, or they were being displaced, or they were impoverished, or they were going through the Great Depression, or they were going through just acute trauma and didn't have the wherewithal to metabolize the residues of all these dramatic stresses. But we hopefully are a little bit more stable, and so we can do that. It lands in us. We know that through the science of epigenetics and trauma science, that it lands in the next generations. And so we have the power to turn that around and heal it. And as I was saying, we heal retroactively, but we also heal forward, because the work that I do has enormous ripples to affect my children, my grandchildren, my students, the world around me. You don't have to be a mother or a father to feel that these ripples are going out, these ripples of healing. So much to talk about here.
Indeed, but I want to create some space for anything that we haven't gotten to discuss yet that you wanted to make sure to bring forward.
Well, I think that, I'm super excited about this new area of study. I don't like to teach the same thing twice, although it's all interconnected. And this new area of my study, alchemy, and how it, in its confluence with Kabbalah and its confluence with the underground women's or feminine wisdom tradition, is just like gives me chills, and I'm really excited to share it.
Let's talk explicitly about this upcoming program, since we've been referencing it, and I think it is such an incredible opportunity to do this deep alchemical work, to really claim our role as ancestral healers, and to able to transmute that which we've inherited into real gifts for the world, and to reconnect with the light that is at the core of all of it. So the program is called Alchemy for the Evolving Ancestral Healer. Raise, carry, bless, and bury the bones of your familial wounds. And so it very much is in alignment with what we've shared today, and puts it into experiential practice, and really makes it a journey of transforming your particular inheritance in a really beautiful transmutational way. So you can find the program laid out in detail at Ancestral Healing Alchemy, ALCHEMY.com, ancestralhealingalchemy.com. And it is a unique confluence of these different elements: spiritual practices, alchemical practices, psychological work, ancestral healing work, that you're really working with these different threads to become that alchemical vessel in which the inheritance you've arrived here with is transformed in a beautiful way. So, Tirzah, I'd love for you to share a little bit about this 9-week program that you're going to be offering, and then I'll read out the module titles, so you can give us a little sneak preview of what's coming.
Okay, great. I love this title, Raise, Carry, Bless, and Bury the Bones of your familial wounds. You can hear how that came out of my own unconscious and my own Mercurius process. We're asking all participants to come with one family wound or troubling issue that you're dealing with, either in yourself or your family lineage, that begs for healing. And so that will really govern the shape, or will create the shape of your work. It'll be very personal, very immersive. We're going to be literally raising those pathogenic family patterns from the depths where they can be so destructive, and carry them. In terms of the myth, we carry them to a new land, to lay them to rest once and for all with this alchemical process. As we have said, and as you've underscored, Stephen, we work in a hermetically sealed alchemical vessel, which is our group. This will be a community of healers and people who are studying ancestral healing from around the world. We step out of linear time. We anchor ourselves in the unseen worlds. We actually do the work, but it's also a profound journey, as we'll see when we go through the modules, to study the archetypes, these different elements inside of our own psyches, and to liberate them. And so it's a lot of personal looking. It's a lot of inner work that is for the express goal of becoming the philosopher's stone, which is alchemical language for becoming this healer, becoming this elixir of healing, this gold, so that we really become the most light, enlightened, and radiant people that we're meant to be.
Module 1, at the boundary of science and magic.
Yeah, so Module 1, we begin the journey to understand the nexus of all these different disciplines, alchemy, Kabbalah, Jungian psychology, and recognize the important archetypes within our own personalities, and the place of our original wounding, and the things that we're carrying. We enter in right away into the ancestral chambers to begin the ancestral work.
Module 2, coming through the dark night of the soul.
Yeah, so as soon as we take off on a journey toward light, we get, it's just part and parcel of the work. We engage, and the dark night of the soul, the alchemists called it Negredo. It's the dark point that all mystical journeys begin, when things fall apart in our world, and the inner work draws us inward toward transformation. Here we discover the first stages of the alchemical process, and we start to work with our core complex, or our core wound, the one that we're carrying from our family, or just that we've accrued in this lifetime.
Module 3, Alchemical Ritual Lab 1, Raising the Bones.
There's 9 modules. Every third one is a ritual lab, and my students know what ritual labs are. We are guided, you'll be guided into the interior. The class is less didactic, it's all practice, it's ritual, it's profound, it's life-changing. And in this first ritual lab, we literally raise the bones of our familial wounds and carry them forward through time. I don't want to say any more than that.
Module 4, Marrying Your Inner Other.
Okay, here we explore the first 3 stages of the alchemical process, and particularly focus on the archetype of anima, the divine feminine within, and animus, the divine masculine within ourselves, with special focus on the balancing and the marrying of these aspects of our psyche. And this is a profound work where we learn so much about ourselves.
Module 5, the glistening warmth of a whole self.
On this session, you work on the next principle of alchemical healing, which is our human tendency to objectify, to fear, to blame, to dehumanize the other. And here I'll guide us in processes about shadow and shadow projection, And that's really powerful. And you'll also explore the reddening stage of alchemy here, known as rubito, in which you find this warm ruby red philosopher's stone within.
Module 6, Alchemical Ritual Lab 2, Carrying and Burying the Bones, Laying the Pain Body to Rest.
Yeah, it kind of says it, doesn't it? In this ritual lab, again, it's the same thing. It's not didactic, it's experiential. We're working with the pain body, which is the residual energies, the energies that are still in the field of our families, even though the trauma may have happened 3 generations ago. My grandparents may have died in the Holocaust, and I'm fine, but I still feel that pain. I still feel, we call that the pain body. And so we're invoking our ancestors in a ritual ceremony, and we work to bury the pain body of our ancestors.
Module 7, Re-choosing Your Voluminous Self.
Okay, so in this last triad of the course, and by the way, there's a week off between each triad, so there's lots of time to integrate, and my students in the past have loved that. Just time, we have a recess, so you have time to relax and just dream, and the pressure is off. So we reconvene for module 7, where we take all that we've done so far and move forward to shed the old story in our personalities, the old stories that we tell ourselves about our limitations and about the world and about how we'll never do this or never do that. And we enter new territory. We enter the quote unquote, the promised land. Here we encounter and engage the wise old man, the wise old woman, another set of archetypes that lives within us.
Module 8, Alchemical Ritual Lab 3, Preparing to Cross the Threshold of This Life.
And because ritual labs are so potent, I didn't want to leave it for the last module number 9. So we do it in 8. And here we do the deep work of cleansing our fears around death and all the negative ancestral beliefs that we've inherited about the dying process. And we're guided in this powerful meditation to the threshold of our lives. Once again, I don't want to say too much, but it is really life-changing.
And finally, Module 9, Creating a Luminous Legacy.
Okay. And in the 9th and final module, we explore the archetype of the apocalypse, which literally means the revealing, the great revealing, the great uncovering. This is the archetype that is prevailing in our world right now, all over the world, and we'll examine what's coming to light in your life as also in the world, and how we bring forward all that we've learned and all that we've attained in the course, and we become initiated to be agents of light and agents of life, what the alchemists call the philosopher's stone. So we bring that magic into the world with some tools and with beautiful ending ritual.
Well, what an extraordinary program, and it's really just so clear what a warm and deeply transformational quality you bring to the teaching and guiding and facilitation of this program as well. So again, it's a 9-module program. This is a more advanced dive. It actually builds upon the previous teachings that Tirzah offered in her previous 7-week program. So what we've done is create a way for you to do both so that you can on-ramp into this new program while you also get to catch up with the teachings and transformational ideas and practices that she offered in her first program. So I'll share about that in a minute. But first, again, you can see the whole program laid out in detail at ancestralhealingalchemy.com, ancestralhealingalchemy.com. So you get not only the 9 90-minute sessions with Tirzah, which is going to include time to ask your questions, engage in group exercises and rituals. You're also going to get recordings, video and audio, plus word-for-word transcripts to study and highlight. There'll be some small group time to connect in dialogue with other participants, really share your journey. There's weekly exercises for home, a Facebook community that's going to be more global, and also a number of extra bonuses on the page. There's one with Tirzah and Paul Levy, who's another Shift faculty member, how the ancient art of alchemy can help us transform the weight of the world. There's also a video session with Tirzah called Return to the Ancestral Halls. and a live Q&A called the Live Community Parlor with Tirzah that really lets you ask much deeper questions in whatever direction you want. In addition, there's a special bonus that's available for anyone who signs up right away, and we like to do this as a way to encourage you to make a decision right away, and that's going to be the Ritual Lab Package, which is a video ceremonies from Tirzah. You want to say a little bit about that Ritual Lab Package?
Yeah, these are all guided experiential rituals that you can do in your own leisure, and which will help to deepen your process, your transformation. Yeah, they're powerful.
Well, it's truly an amazing program, and I did mention that for all those who are new to this teaching trajectory with Tirzah, you're going to get the full 7-week program, Ancestral Wisdom for Walking the Path of the Holy Being, Ancient Buddhist and Jewish Practices for Healing, Transformation, and Higher Service. So that's going to provide you a whole set of different foundations and practices that complement this journey and really give you some context for multiple lineages for how to do this at the deepest level. And you can complete that material at your leisure. You can do some of it in advance of the program if that's helpful, but you can do it in parallel as well. So it's a really great package, extraordinary, really unprecedented offer of ancestral healing work all together to have both. We've kept the price really accessible for this program. It's just 3 payments of $254, so you can save 10% when you pay in full at $694. The course is going to begin June 29th and run Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. But even if you can't make those live times, you can still get the full value by participating with the recordings and the transcripts and the community as well. I particularly encourage you to go to the page and check out some of the testimonials from Tirzah's previous students. She's really beloved as a faculty member. She creates such a loving, inviting, deep, profound, wise environment in which you can take in deep practices, that you can do your inner work and really be guided to open to higher octaves of your own potential. So again, you can find all the details, including those testimonials, at ancestralhealingalchemy.com, ancestralhealingalchemy.com. So Tirzah, we just have a couple of minutes left. I just want to open anything else you want to share with folks who are considering diving deeper into this work with you.
I'm just chuckling to myself, ancestral healing alchemy. AHA! I love acronyms, so it's the AHA. You are going to. If you journey with me, you will really have some deep ahas. Your life will really expand, and your potential as a healer, as a leader, as a spiritual leader. So I'm so excited to join with all of you, and I invite you to join with me in this beautiful global community. And let's take off together. Let's do this.
Well, it's been a great time with you, and I just thank you for the space that you create and the depth of wisdom that you share. And I love this synthesis of when you said at one point you were saying alchemists and Kabbalists, and you almost said Kabbalists. It was sort of like this fusion of 2 different lineages into one beautiful path where you're really drawing from these wisdom streams and the practice of the deep psychological transformation that can really lead us to the goal of a more awakened and healed life. So thank you, Rabbi Tirzah, for your time, your beauty, your love, and your wisdom. And thank you all for joining us. And you're warmly welcome to go further with Tirzah at ancestralhealingalchemy.com. AHA, as she pointed out, ancestralhealingalchemy.com. Many blessings.